I will tell you a story. I have one you haven't heard before. Well, you might have heard it, but not like this. Never like this. I like to sit before performing. I just like to hone in. Somewhere in that place, everything kind of goes a bit quiet. I just check in with myself. What are my muscles feeling? How is my heart? What's going on with the environment? What do things feel like beneath my fingers? What does my cloth or clothes feel like on my body? It's like walking on breath. And then right before I begin, and I can never quite tell when I'm beginning, there's just this general blur. Everything goes inwards at that point, and what's outside doesn't really matter anymore. It's just about the pathways, about what has been set and what needs to come out in that moment. I take traditional folklore, traditional beliefs, and traditional systems of doing and try to incorporate them into performative works. That could be actual performance, dance theater. It could be praise poetry. And more recently, it's been room scale installations. I like to think of myself as somebody who's almost a scientist. You experiment, you make a hypothesis, you test it. You keep working from different angles on a project to see what results you get and what those results tell you about the nature of the world. There's something very visceral about drawing. There's something very physical about drawing. Your hand in relation to your body and all of that helps with the direction that the piece is going to go in and what the feel of it is. It's very much, for me, I think, a way of figuring things out. So language more than expression in that sort of way that we use that word around dance, but really a language and an exploratory language at that. I will use a lot of sound. I will use found sound. For instance, listening to a lot of sound from the International Space Station. So sometimes I'll just put recording on my phone and just record my day and listen back to that. I've recorded bobo groups, church drivers, mates, the hawkers on the streets, churches blaring. There's this kind of throb of energy that goes all the way through the city all the time. It's a very special place to be as an artist because of that. There's so much life, there's so much movement. There's just a really great energy here. And it's something I think that just kind of wraps itself around you and takes hold. When you go to schools, the history of Ghana is taught from the landing of the first Europeans. If you begin your history where your core self is supposed to start from somebody else arriving, you don't have a basis for life. It means your whole existence is precipitated around this other being, this other culture, civilization, group of people. And if you can turn back to yourself and validate yourself for yourself without needing to reference another history, culture, civilization, you validate that, and then you validate every project that comes out of that self. So a lot of my work plays with that idea of what happens if you can furnish some of those details. Some of my performances, I use white paint across my face, and the white as well that I put into my hair is a sign of a connection to the spiritual.
Did you pray today? Did you pray? Did you pray today? Did you
the States was the first time I thought of myself as Black or as African. You all of a sudden are defined by the color of your skin. And that was very difficult for me, that immediately you must associate with this group of people because you share a very sort of surface level, literally, heritage. Because I would be more interested, for instance, in the heritage of place. But then that would move conversations beyond a certain level. And understanding kind of the hurt that comes behind that characterization in the States and not being able to relate to that. And then the frustration of a lot of like African Americans that you should understand you're African, we're the same, but learning that we're really not, and that that's fine as well, but there's so much pain, I think, in that conversation, and we haven't done well at having it. Through school, I was always teased, like white girl, that's why you like reading, that's why you like sci-fi. But there was also that sort of independence that you have, where you don't know anybody and nobody knows you. Then you can really kind of figure out what you do like and what you don't like and what you're interested in, and it's without that restriction of, I've known you since you were a child.
You got power, you got weight.
I think anybody who leaves home is trying to find something. For me, it was clarity. Thinking that maybe if you threw yourself into something that was so different from you, you'd be able to then cut off the bits that weren't, and in a funny way, be able to define that border a bit more clearly. It felt very important to be back home because all my work is here. All the research that I'm doing, the substance of it is in Ghana. Someone asked me a while back whether it's the same character or different characters in a lot of my solo performance work, and I don't think I have an answer to that. I do think it all goes back to this idea of sort of role of repository of the oral knowledge of a people. So that would normally be somebody, an Okyeame, or a figure in the court that had the history of the court, but literally the whole family's legacy is just to remember and to pass on that history and then to recount it as and when necessary. I think that figure, or a compendium of that figure, is kind of what I'm building across all these performances. I think the more you find these stories that you especially feel are lost or that don't exist, there's a lot of catharsis, there's a lot of emotion around that, because it is a healing process. And also just a very special sense of discovery that you have found yourself, something that you lost, something that you're not able to articulate, that people have had the words before you and you just lost them.
It's so